This being your third season, it seems like you've been a lot more assertive or spicy this year.
Spicy? So? I'm not really spicy. That's good. I mean, I feel like for me, it's just my approach. It's just coming in and just trying to be dominant in anything the team needs. And so if that gives off spicy, which I really don't think it does, I feel like I'm like kind of quiet.
Spice?
No, I just not spicy. But yeah, I feel like.
Picture this. Your franchise player tears her groin 13 games into what was supposed to be a championship run. Your second best scorer goes down with a knee injury. Then your third option. Then your fourth. 5 core players gone. Your roster becomes a revolving door of hardship signings and desperate phone calls. Most teams would fold their season right there, start planning for next year's draft lottery. But sometimes in the most impossible circumstances, something magical happens instead. The Indiana Fever just clinched their first playoff spot since 2016.
When you think back to the beginning of the season, if someone were to tell you, like, this is where you would be, this is your team, like, at the end of the season, like, genuinely, what do you think the reaction would be?
Probably no stinking way. I don't think, thinking back to the beginning of the season, that anyone would have ever foreseen it going like this.
And they did it with half their original roster, watching from the bench in street clothes. But here's the part that has the entire WNBA buzzing right now. It's what Aliyah Boston said in that locker room after they demolished Washington 94-65. Her words didn't just inspire her teammates. They revealed exactly why this team might be the most dangerous, low seed the playoffs have ever seen. Let's rewind to where this story really begins, because what happened in Indianapolis this season defies every rule of professional basketball. When Caitlin Clark went down with that torn groin muscle, the basketball world collectively held its breath.
Like it got harder for us. It was about sticking together, and I think through everything you're able to see that us play with joy, us play together regardless of who's on that floor.
This was the sophomore sensation who was averaging over 16 points per game, the playmaker who had fans packing Gainbridge Fieldhouse night after night, believing that this was finally the year the Fever would return to relevance. Clark wasn't just their best player. She was their entire marketing campaign, their hope, their future wrapped up in one person. The injury announcement hit like a meteor. You could feel the shockwaves ripple through social media.
For whatever reason, things happen, and you've got to continue to put your best foot forward. You got to continue to stay the course. This group has been forced to grow
through ESPN studios, through every WNBA front office. Suddenly, those playoff conversations that had been building momentum all season just stopped. Analysts lined up to deliver the obvious eulogy. Indiana's season was over before it really began, but Clark was just the beginning of this nightmare. Sophie Cunningham, their defensive anchor and veteran presence, crumpled with a knee injury that would sideline her indefinitely. Then Khloe BBY, another key rotation player, went down with her
strong roots. And teams can go one of two ways when those things happen. You either use it to pull you together and as motivation to continue to get better and do it for one another and do it for your teammates that have been lost to injury.
Knee problem. Sydney Colson joined the injury report. Aari McDonald's foot injury ended her season 2. 5 players, 5 contributors who were supposed to be essential pieces of Indiana's puzzle, all watching from the sidelines as their teammates tried to salvage something from the wreckage. Think about that for a second. Imagine if the Lakers lost LeBron.
So incredibly thankful for the type of people that we have in this locker room, for the way that they have been able to continue to stay the course and bounce back and stay together.
Anthony Davis, and 3 more starters all in the span of a few weeks. That's essentially what happened here, except the Fever didn't have the luxury of tanking for lottery position. They were fighting for playoff positioning in the most competitive WNBA season in recent memory, and suddenly they looked like a college team trying to compete against pros. The numbers tell part of the story, but they can't capture the chaos.
Together, to pull for one another, to really be flexible enough to make space for different types of teams that we've had throughout the course of the
18 different players suited up in Fever uniforms this season. 18. That means if you took a team photo at the beginning of the year, by mid-season, nearly every face would be different. Hardship signings became the norm. Players were flying in from overseas, from other leagues, from wherever general manager Lynn Dunn could find warm bodies who understood basketball fundamentals. This is where most franchises crumble. This is where locker rooms split, where veterans start pointing fingers, where coaches lose their minds trying to install systems with players who barely know each other's names. The easy path would have been to wave the white flag, start developing young talent for next season, and hope everyone got healthy by training camp. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Head coach Stephanie White looked at this disaster and saw opportunity. Instead of panicking, she simplified. Instead of trying to force complex schemes with constantly changing personnel, she stripped everything down to basketball fundamentals. She streamlined rotations, focused on defensive principles that any player could understand regardless of how long they'd been in the system, and most importantly, she changed the entire mental approach. White made a decision that would define this season. Instead of tiptoeing around the adversity, she leaned directly into it. She told her players that this situation wasn't a weakness. It was proof of their toughness. Every practice became about proving they belonged. Every game became about showing the league that depth and determination could overcome talent gaps. The coaching staff had to think outside the box daily, finding ways to maximize players who were barely on WNBA radars just weeks earlier. By August, something shifted. The doubts that had surrounded this team, like storm clouds, began to part, replaced by something much more dangerous: belief. That next woman up mentality that started as pure necessity transformed into genuine identity. Players who had never been asked to carry significant minutes were suddenly thriving under pressure. Role players were becoming stars. Stars were becoming leaders. And then came the moment that crystallized everything. Their playoff-clinching demolition of the Washington Mystics, a performance so dominant it felt less like basketball and more like a statement to the entire league. The game started as you'd expect from a team missing half its rotation. Washington came out aggressive, trading baskets, keeping things competitive. There was nervous energy in the building, that familiar tension of a team trying not to let a golden opportunity slip away. The Fever's offense looked disjointed early, and you could almost hear the collective anxiety of every Indiana fan, wondering if this would be another heartbreaking near miss. But something magical happened in the third quarter. The Fever's defense didn't just tighten up, it became suffocating. They held Washington to 9 points in that entire 12-minute stretch. 9 points. That's not just good defense. That's approaching historically dominant territory. Every passing lane seemed disrupted. Every shot contested. Every possession a battle that Indiana was winning through pure will. From there, the floodgates opened. The lead that had been hovering around competitive suddenly ballooned past 20, past 25, eventually reaching a 33-point gap that made this look like a completely different class of basketball. This wasn't just winning. This was sending a message to every potential playoff opponent that this Indiana team was nothing like what anyone expected. The individual performances tell their own story of resilience. Natasha Howard stepped up with 17 points, punishing Washington inside and playing like the veteran presence this team desperately needed. Aliyah Boston controlled the paint on both ends, posting another double-double with 12 points and 11 rebounds, while maintaining the kind of steady leadership that championship teams require. But here's what made this win special. It wasn't carried by one superstar having an extraordinary night. Aerial Powers came off the bench and contributed 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists, looking like the spark plug this team had been searching for all season. Lexi Hall was everywhere, diving for loose balls and turning defense into transition opportunities. Shea Petty went perfect from three-point range, knocking down all 3 of her attempts and finishing with 13 points. Even Kelsey Mitchell, on an off-shooting night, found ways to contribute 10 points and steady the backcourt. 5 different Fever players reached double figures. In a league where offensive balance is rare and most teams live or die by their top 2 scorers, Indiana proved they could hurt you from anywhere. That's not just depth. That's the kind of unpredictable versatility that makes teams dangerous in playoff basketball. The statistical domination was even more telling than the final score. Washington turned the ball over 22 times compared to Indiana's 6. 22 turnovers that the Fever converted into 27 points, essentially gift-wrapping possessions and turning them into easy buckets. When you're taking care of the ball that well, while forcing your opponent into constant mistakes, you're not just winning games, you're controlling them completely. But statistics only tell part of the story. The real magic happened in that locker room afterward, where Aliyah Boston delivered the kind of speech that teammates remember for the rest of their careers. Boston has been the steady heartbeat of this team all season, but what she's accomplished goes far beyond normal expectations. This was her 17th double-double of the year, breaking the franchise record and cementing her place as one of the most consistent forces in the entire WNBA. In just 2 professional seasons, she's racked up 41 career double-doubles, the kind of production that usually takes veteran players years to accumulate. Against Washington, Boston posted a plus-minus of 29, meaning the Fever outscored their opponents by nearly 30 points during the time she was on the floor. That's not coincidence. That's proof that this team plays its best basketball when she's orchestrating everything from the center position. Without Clark, Boston couldn't just replace scoring. Anyone can hunt for extra shots. She had to become the team's backbone, the steady pulse that kept everything together when chaos threatened to take over. She chased down rebounds, anchored the defense against Washington's drives, and moved the ball with decisive passes that created easy opportunities for teammates. She wasn't just playing center. She was becoming the center of Indiana's entire identity. When reporters asked Boston about the atmosphere in that locker room after clinching playoffs, her response revealed everything about this team's mentality. She mentioned with a laugh that they didn't even make a TikTok video, but quickly shifted into leader mode, explaining that while everyone was excited, the job wasn't finished. They had another game to prepare for, then playoffs to attack. That balance between joy and business is what separates good teams from great ones. Boston understands how to celebrate the moment while maintaining focus on bigger goals. But it was what she told her teammates in that private moment that has everyone talking. Never doubt yourself and what you're capable of, no matter what happens. Those words weren't just motivation, they were a declaration. You could see how they played like they believed it. Hull diving on floors for every possession. Petty lighting up from deep with zero hesitation. Powers coming off the bench like instant firepower. That mantra became the invisible force pushing them forward, and fans across social media started echoing those same words. Here's what makes the story even more incredible. What if this season of injuries was actually the best thing that could have happened to Indiana's future? From the outside, losing 5 core players looked like complete disaster. But think about what this adversity actually created. 18 different players got meaningful minutes in Fever uniforms this season. That means this organization now has a roster capable of plugging anyone into significant roles without missing a beat. Lexi Hull and Shea Petty stepped into responsibilities nobody expected them to handle. Natasha Howard and Ariel Powers provided veteran stability when everything else felt uncertain. Kelsey Mitchell and Aliyah Boston now own playoff experience as primary options, not just supporting pieces. When Caitlin Clark returns healthy in 2026, she's walking into a locker room that will already have championship DNA. She'll join a team that learned how to win collectively, that proved depth and determination can overcome individual talent gaps, that forged their identity in the fire of adversity. The playoff picture looks brutal for Indiana. They're likely facing Atlanta, Las Vegas, or Phoenix in the first round. 3 teams with championship aspirations and home court advantage. The best-of-3 format means 2 of those games happen on the road against opponents who are supposed to be playing teams with full rotations. But here's what nobody's talking about. The Fever already proved they can compete with each of those potential opponents. They took games off all 3 during the regular season, using that same short-handed rotation we see now. This isn't a team sneaking into playoffs, hoping to avoid embarrassment. This is a group that genuinely believes they can make noise. For fans in Indianapolis, the significance runs even deeper. This is their first home playoff game since 2016. Nearly a decade without postseason basketball in their building, and it's happening because this roster learned how to win together. They're bringing playoff basketball back to Gainbridge Fieldhouse with a team nobody expected to be here. The identity forged under this pressure isn't temporary. It's the foundation of something bigger. This season tested the Fever in ways no one anticipated, stripping them down to their core elements. What remained wasn't weakness or excuses. It was grit, depth, and unshakable belief. For the first time since 2015, Indiana has both a winning record and playoff positioning. That's not lucky scheduling or weak competition. That's proof that what they built under adversity is absolutely real. Which brings us to the question that should terrify the rest of the WNBA. If this is what they accomplished with half a roster, what happens when they're whole again? The foundation is stronger than ever. The culture is championship caliber. And Aliyah Boston just proved she's ready to lead them wherever this journey takes them next. The playoffs are here, the momentum is real, and nobody's going to want to face this Indiana Fever team.